Welcome back to another one of my videos. As always, I find these stories that I read to you from different subreddits on the Reddit website. And I always leave a link in the description. So that way, instead of watching gameplay through the video, you can read along if you would like to. That said, let's get into the video. I went to a local trail for a date. Things aren't what they seem here. Part 2. I held my breath and got underwater. I couldn't see, but as I swam around, I felt something touch me. I reached out and felt a hand grab onto mine. It must be Claire. I was trying to lead her to the surface when I realized the hand was pulling me downward. I pulled it up, but it was immediately yanked back down. The grip on my hand tightened. I struggled to get free, almost breathing in water. Then I heard a strange noise through the water. It almost sounded like hissing, or maybe growling. My arm flew up as I shot up to the surface in fear. Something grazed my back and I jumped. I turned around to see a human arm, decaying and detached from the body. It even had a bone sticking out at the end. I screamed and ran out of the water, falling and tripping over rocks. I began hyperventilating. I called out for Claire several times but got no response. Had that creepy thing in the water gotten her? I found my phone and dialed 911. Surprisingly, I got a signal. I frantically talked to the operator, begging them to get someone out here as soon as possible. Officers and ambulance arrived soon after. The first officer who arrived on scene asked for my ID and I showed it to him. He glanced at it and then back at me. He asked me if I could come with him to the station to answer some questions. I didn't know not to tell him what happened without sounding out of my mind. I was happy to help, but wanted to know if Claire was okay first. He was honest with me that he couldn't give me an answer yet, but would tell me as soon as he knew. I rode with him back to the station, and he stepped out for a few minutes to take a call. His facial expression was noticeably different when he returned. "How did you know Claire?" he asked. I explained to him that we dated our senior year of high school and the first 2 years after. He asked why we broke up. I sat and thought for a moment. Embarrassingly enough, I couldn't remember the exact reason. Just that we grew apart. I told him that. He nodded. "Did she talk to you at all about her divorce?" he asked. I shrugged. "Not really. I didn't think it was my place to ask. Maybe she was still in love with me," I joked. The officer didn't seem to think it was funny. I apologized. The officer asked some strange questions like where I grew up and what I did for work. Finally, I got frustrated and stopped him. "Did they find Claire?" I asked. He tried to avoid the question, but I insisted. The officer sighed and began talking. "Trevor, Claire's been missing for days now. Her high school ex, Aiden, was found dead in his apartment a few hours ago, but his phone, wallet, and several other items were missing. It appeared to be a robbery. But then, we found out you made threats to him several months ago. You and Claire were divorcing, and you assumed it was because she was still in love with him. Phone records are showing that messages went to Claire from Aiden's phone at a time that was after his time of death. You lured Claire out to the trail, then murdered her and tossed her body in the pond. For whatever reason, you dressed up in some of Aiden's clothes tonight and called us as him. You must be feeling guilty. Why don't you go ahead and just tell me what happened?" I started shaking. The officer told me to think back a few days, and I did. I was drinking. I was alone. I looked at Claire's profile from a fake account I made. She'd blocked me immediately after our divorce was finalized. She posted a gorgeous selfie. Tons of thirsty, pathetic guys liked it. I clicked to see the names. Aiden, of course, had. I knew she still had feelings for him. Sometimes I didn't blame her. It's hard to lose feelings for an old flame. That said, I hated hearing about him. When we were moving into our marital home, I found some hand-painted terracotta pots in one of her boxes. She snatched them away from me as I unpacked them. I kept asking where they were from, and she finally caved. Apparently she and Aiden painted them during their trip to Arizona. Why would she insult me by still having them? I don't know. Sitting at home alone, I fixated on Aiden more and more. I already knew where he lived. I'd be able to figure this out months ago. I had also figured out his routine. The guy was pretty predictable after all. I watched outside while his lights turned off for the night that Saturday. I entered his apartment with the spare key I had paid to have made by the sketchy maintenance guy. The sedatives I'd laced into Aiden's water jug were clearly working. He didn't stir as I walked into his room. I opened his phone. I knew him and Claire were having an affair long before the divorce. Shockingly, there weren't any messages between them during our marriage. That didn't mean anything, though. I could feel it in my bones that Claire still loved him. I began messaging Claire as Aiden. She quickly agreed to meet up with him that night. I knew it. He's the reason I lost my Claire. Eventually, Aiden began to stir, making me uneasy. With the help of a phone charger, I made sure he never moved again. Claire looked shocked when she saw me get out of Aiden's truck, wearing his clothes. "What the hell?" she asked. "Isn't this who you wanted tonight?" "I'm just being who you wanted all along," I responded. "Where's Aiden?" "You're crazy," she shouted. I don't remember what happened next, or maybe I just blocked it out. All I remember is walking back from the pond, clothes wet, and my face and arms scratched and bloody. The officer snapped me back into reality, asking why I returned on Saturday. The thing is, I couldn't tell him. It was like I was in a trance, living a life that wasn't mine. The officer placed me under arrest. I still couldn't figure out why I went back. In an empty corner of the room, I saw her. Claire. She was dripping wet, her hair and clothes dirty, and a creepy smile on her face. I stepped back, pointing. The officer appeared confused. After I started screaming, I heard him call for backup. I was injected with something. My eyes became heavy and I closed them. I could still see Claire with my eyes closed. If you liked that video, then like the video. If you're going to bed soon, sweet dreams. And if you have a full day ahead of you, I hope it goes well. Thank you for taking your time to spend on watching one of my videos on my channel, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.